تذكرت بكركي كان التأييد.
Good afternoon and thank you for joining us on FutureTV. I'm Linda Tamima and these are today's top stories. Prime Minister Tamam Islam expresses hope that rival political parties will elect a new president, hailing the stances of Saudi Arabia to support Lebanon. The Future bloc reiterates that Lebanese Forces leader Samir Jaja is the group's candidate for the presidential election. And Thailand's army declares martial law across the country to restore order following months of anti-government protests. Prime Minister Tamam Islam, who is currently in Jeddah, has held a who is currently on a two-day visit to Saudi Arabia, has expressed hope that the rival political parties will elect a new president, hailing the stances of Saudi Arabia to support Lebanon during this critical stage. Parliament has so far failed to elect a new president over differences between the March 8 and 14 alliances. Salam traveled to the monarchy on Monday at the head of a delegation on his first official foreign trip since the formation of the cabinet in February. He is expected to meet with Saudi King Abdullah and prominent Saudi officials. The PM will tackle the ongoing Syrian refugee crisis and several other issues pertaining to Lebanon and the region. Future movement leader Saad Hariri has met with Salam after he arrived in Jeddah and has held a dinner banquet in honor of the premier and his delegation. Saudi ambassador to Lebanon Ali Awad Asiri says his country hopes the new president will follow in the footsteps of his predecessor, President Michel Sleiman. Asiri hopes for the election of a consensual president who adopts the Babda Declaration and the policy of dissociation from the conflict on Syria, as Sleiman did. The Future bloc reiterates in a statement that Lebanese Forces leader Samir Jaja is the group's candidate for the presidential elections and calls on the March 8 camp to announce their own contender. The bloc adds that obstructing the presidential election will result in void that can tarnish the image of Lebanon and its stability. They reiterate the need to hold the polls before President Michel Sleiman's mandate ends on the 25th of this month. The bloc statement comes a day after Jaja refuted reports citing him as saying that former Prime Minister Saad Hariri backed Free Patriotic Movement leader Michel Aoun as a consensus candidate. Jaja traveled to Paris and held talks with Hariri over the weekend, discussing all the options available to break the impasse over the presidency. President Michel Sleiman says he is worried that the election of any of Lebanon's four key Maronite political leaders could trigger acts of revenge. When asked about his recent conflict with Hezbollah over the Syrian crisis, Sleiman stood firm on his convictions and said he had no regrets. He states that Hezbollah chose to fight in Syria without asking the army, the people, or the head of state if they could afford the consequences of involvement in the Syrian war. Sleiman says he did not favor any specific candidate for the presidential seat. Interior Minister Nuhad Mashnouk says that extending the mandate of President Michel Sleiman is justified. Mashnouk spoke from Abu Dhabi, where he announced a tour of several Gulf states aimed at encouraging tourism and garnering support for Lebanon's security services. He adds that there are a lot of reasons to extend Sleiman's term, mainly the standards he set for any successor. Mashnouk states that the unrest Lebanon had been through should not prevent it from restoring its pioneering role in the region and ensuring growth in the country, citing the advancements achieved by the United Arab Emirates as a model. He says there were a lot of freedom fighters in Lebanon, both inside and outside the government, peacefully struggling for their moderation, independence and sovereignty. The minister says that moderation is the safe way to protect coexistence between various sects in the country. Security sources say 8 Lebanese soldiers, including a lieutenant, were wounded when their vehicle came under attack in the northern city of Tripoli overnight. Gunmen fired machine guns and a rocket-propelled grenade at an army unit carrying out raids, hunting for wanted suspects in the neighborhood of Bab Tabene. They said an APC was destroyed in the attack near Naisari Mosque on Syria Street, which separates Bab Tabene from its traditional rival neighborhood of Jabal Mahsen. Security sources say that Khalid Naaman, a militia commander who led the attack against the army, was wounded in the ensuing exchange of fire. A military expert defuses a grenade found in a residential neighborhood in the Shuf town of Rumayle. The army states that the grenade was attached to a detonator and placed near a gasoline gallon, and that the device was found inside a small container that was filled with a flammable material. The explosive device was discovered under a vehicle parked near a residential building located next to the road leading to the center of Rumayle. The town's municipal chief stated that the car's owner is a resident. However, he did not reveal his identity. Security forces blocked the old seaside road between Jiyeh and Rumayle when the expert defused the grenade. Clashes continue in Deraa city as members of the Free Syrian Army have attempted to take over the last regime force checkpoint in the town. The FSA claim they are in control of all the areas of Deraa city except for the Manshia neighborhood, which is valued to the regime as it is the most important area. They claim it is the only point left under their control as they have freed other areas of Deraa. The battle in Manshia has been waging on for almost 3 or 4 days now, and the FSA vowed to carry on with the attack until they succeed. Elsewhere in the country, Syrian opposition activists say forces loyal to President Bashar al-Assad have dropped a chlorine bomb on a rebel-held village, killing a teenager, the 6th alleged poison gas attack there in 2 months. And coming up next, Live Love Lebanon, the tourism ministry's newest campaign, is proving a hit with the Lebanese. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Gunmen traveling in a car have opened fire on a group of Egyptian policemen outside Cairo's Al-Azhar University, killing 3 and wounding 9 others. The attack comes just days ahead of a presidential election on May the 26th and 27th, which former Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is expected to win. The number of attacks targeting policemen has risen since Sisi ousted Islamist President Mohamed Morsi last July. The latest comes as some students of Cairo's Al-Azhar University were protesting in favor of Morsi. The attack also came a day after 2 policemen riding on a motorbike were shot dead by a gunman in the central city of Minya. Just yesterday, militants blew up a gas pipeline near Al-Arish airport in northern Sinai. 11 Yemeni soldiers and 14 Houthi rebels have been killed during clashes in a stronghold of the insurgents in the north of the country. Dozens of other fighters were wounded in the gunfight that erupted on the western outskirts of Amran city. A military source says 3 soldiers were killed in the clashes, which broke out when rebels attacked an army position in the area. Tensions remain high in Amran, where Houthis have been trying to enforce their presence through armed parades and protests against the military. The suspected aim of the rebels is to enlarge their sphere of influence, as the country is set to be divided into 6 federal regions, pushing out from their mountain strongholds in far north to areas closer to the capital of Sana'a. The rebels complain that Yemen will be divided into rich and poor regions under the plan agreed in February, following national talks that were part of Yemen's political transition. Libya's interim government condemns an attack on parliament by forces apparently loyal to renegade General Khalifa Haftar and says his army is not legitimate. Libya's chief of staff calls for the bloodshed to stop, saying it presents opportunity to the enemies to gain power. This comes after militias backing Haftar stormed parliament on Sunday, ransacking the building before withdrawing to the southern part of the capital, where they clashed with rivals in fighting that reportedly killed 2 and wounded 50. Haftar launched his uprising last week, presenting himself as a nationalist, aiming to restore order to the country. Moving on to Europe, Russia's defense ministry says its units have started dismantling their camps in the border regions in line with President Vladimir Putin's order. However, NATO challenges the Russians to prove that they are doing what they are saying. NATO, which estimates that Russia has 40,000 troops along the border with Ukraine, says it is watching the situation closely but could not yet confirm a change. Rebels continue to exchange fire with government forces on the outskirts of the eastern city of Slavyansk, which has been the epicenter of clashes. Russian President Vladimir Putin meets his Chinese counterpart in Shanghai at the start of a 2-day conference on Asian security with leaders from Iran and Central Asia. The 2 governments are negotiating a multi-billion-dollar sale of Russian gas to China. Putin, who is facing diplomatic isolation in the West over Ukraine, received a boost on the official visit to China, where he hopes to expand his country's dealings with Asia. And now for news around the world in brief. Thailand's army has declared martial law across the country to to restore order following months of anti-government protests that have left 28 people dead and hundreds wounded. An announcement on military-run television said martial law had been invoked to restore peace and order for people from all sides, stressing that the move is not a coup. The move, which gives the military control of nationwide security rather than police, risks angering supporters of the government if it is seen as a tantamount to a coup. The United States has indicted 5 Chinese military officials with cyber espionage charges for allegedly hacking into U.S. companies to gain trade secrets. The Justice Department has publicly accused China of cyber spying for the first time, saying the hackers targeted U.S. companies in the nuclear power, metals and solar products industries to steal information useful to competitors in China. China refuted accusations, saying they were made up, and urged the U.S. to immediately rectify the mistake. Credit Suisse has become the first big bank in 2 decades to own up to criminal wrongdoing, pleading guilty to U.S. charges that it willfully helped Americans evade taxes. U.S. prosecutors say the Swiss financial giant agreed to pay $2.6 billion in fines related to sham entities it set up to disguise true ownership of accounts, destroying records and enabling structured fund transfers to evade reporting requirements. A 90-year-old World War II veteran has graduated with honors from Xavier University after attending as a part-time student for 68 years. Walter Seaton Bunker walked across the stage, making the sign for his now alma mater to thunderous applause and cheers from the audience. Bunker began attending the institution in 1946 and withdrew for medical reasons. In 1947, he met and married his wife, Martha Heeken. The couple had 10 children, all of whom graduated from college, spurring Bunker on to finally finish his education. Huffer initially was not going to go to his graduation, but when the university representatives called to ask him if he'd willing to assist his fellow graduate, he did not hesitate to accept. Bunker triumphantly made it through his graduation ceremony despite having undergone 13 radiation treatments to battle lung cancer. Live Love Lebanon, the tourism ministry's campaign aimed at boosting visitors to the country, is proving a hit with the Lebanese, with the hashtag now trending on Twitter. The campaign, launched earlier this month during the Dubai Universal Travel and Tourism Fair, and then again last week in Beirut, seeks to challenge the image of Lebanon as tied to the Syrian crisis, which has caused a major decline in the country's tourism sector over the last 3 years. The promotion is a guide to Lebanon's most prominent touristic sites and includes different programs and packages for various Lebanese regions on the campaign's website, www.livelovelebanon.com. The programs fall under 6 categories: culture, nature, adventure, wine, beach, and festivals. The ministry also released a YouTube video, a collection of photos taken by citizens showing the Lebanon we do not see in pictures in the media. Pictures show traditional food dishes in Lebanon, the nightlife in the country, and natural sights, as well as cheerful people. This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our headlines. Prime Minister Tamam Islam expresses hope that rival political parties will elect a new head of state, hailing the stances of Saudi Arabia to support Lebanon. The Future Bloc reiterates that Lebanese Forces leader Samir Jaja is the group's candidate for the presidential election. And Thailand's army declares martial law across the country to restore order following months of anti-government protests. That's it from me and the news team here at Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim, wishing you all a very nice evening.
مذكرة بكركي كانت تأييد